always thought my brother and I would be treated equally, but looking back, everything is not as I imagined. He has always received unconditional support from our parents, while I had to be independent from a very young age. However, what shocked me even more was when my parents decided to leave all their assets to him, while I would only be the one managing things. This made me wonder, have I been expecting too much from a fair family? Since I was young, I always thought my brother and I would be treated equally. Growing up in a middle-class family, my brother and I were both loved by our parents, but they always insisted that we had to earn everything ourselves, not relying on anyone. They never paid for my tuition or anything related to my education, even though I was always the one who worked hard and made constant efforts. On the other hand, my brother, although never good at school, always received protection and support from our parents. I clearly remember the days when I had to struggle to take care of myself. At the age of 17, I joined the military to have a solid foundation for my future. I studied and earned my bachelor's degree through the GI Bill, an opportunity that I took full advantage of. Every day, I worked hard to ensure I could study and live independently. Meanwhile, my brother, although he could have learned a trade and worked, was unable to keep up with any job or program. He tried welding, then switched to mechanics, but dropped out halfway each time. Not because he lacked ability, but because he didn't have the persistence to overcome the challenges. Although my parents loved him very much, they never saw his failures as a serious issue. They always sheltered him and gave him more chances, even though he didn't put in the effort. I was never one to demand excessive attention, but the unfairness in how they treated us truly hurt me. My brother wasn't a bad person, but his weaknesses were no reason for my parents to create such inequality between us. When I grew up and was able to take care of myself, I didn't ask for anything more from my family. However, when I looked at what my brother was receiving from our parents, I couldn't help but feel a growing frustration. I didn't understand why my parents continued to maintain such a different approach, especially when I was the one who had worked tirelessly. The times when my brother couldn't pay his rent, and our parents always stepped in to help him as if it were a given, while I had to handle everything on my own, gradually wore me down and left me feeling disappointed. There were moments when I just wanted to ask my parents to treat me more fairly, but I knew that wouldn't change anything. I could only stand on my own and build a solid future for myself, while my brother remained stuck in a cycle of dependence. All of this made it clearer to me. Love isn't always fair. And in my family, that fairness seemed like a distant dream. My brother and I have a clear difference, not only in how we face life, but also in how we deal with challenges. While I had to be independent from a very young age, my brother always received protection from our parents, even though he didn't put in much effort. Every time he faced difficulties, our parents were the first to step in and help, whether it was when he couldn't pay his rent or when he needed money to continue his trade school. My brother tried both welding and mechanics, but no matter how many times he started over, he couldn't finish. I vividly remember one time when he came home and told our parents he couldn't continue his welding course because he didn't understand the basic theories, and the practical work was too hard for him to keep up with. I couldn't hold back my frustration. I looked at him, always sheltered by our parents, and felt like I was standing on the outside looking in. Our parents immediately said they would give him another chance, without ever pausing to consider if something else could help him grow. Meanwhile, I was facing every hardship on my own. Back in high school, I had to work part-time to make ends meet. Every time my brother failed a course or struggled with his studies, our parents would do whatever they could to make him feel comfortable, while I silently bore the feeling of being left behind. Once, I asked our parents why they never pushed my brother to try harder, but they just vaguely responded that he couldn't manage on his own, like I could. I couldn't understand this reasoning because I always felt that facing challenges was the way people grow. After my brother failed in both trade schools, our parents continued to extend their support. He didn't have to do anything too strenuous, just had a place to live and an easy job at the gas station, and everything seemed fine for him. Every time I saw him, I wondered, Does he ever feel dissatisfied or disappointed with the way he's living? He didn't seem to recognize the struggles I had to endure to stand firm in life. Although I didn't want to blame him, the sense of unfairness grew stronger in me. I had given my all, overcoming so many challenges to achieve my own success, yet still wasn't treated as fairly as he was. And he, despite his repeated failures, was always supported and sheltered by our parents. This not only disappointed me, but also made me question if I was being too harsh by wanting fairness in this family. When my parents started working on their will, I couldn't have imagined that it would be the breaking point for me. I clearly remember the day they informed me about their decision, that almost all of their assets would be left to my brother. They explained that because he couldn't take care of himself, he would need more support after they were gone. This shocked me, not just because of the unfairness of their decision, but also because of how they had treated me over the years. Although I had worked so hard to succeed and build a stable life for myself, I couldn't understand why my parents would choose my brother, someone who had always been sheltered and never truly faced real struggles. I didn't need their wealth, but the feeling of being neglected and treated unfairly was something I couldn't accept. I had spent my youth working, studying, and building my own future, while my brother only needed an easy job at a gas station and a life without worries. I tried to contain my emotions, but the anger was overwhelming. When I asked my parents about their decision, they simply said that my brother needed more help, and they couldn't let him struggle alone. They told me that I had already managed to take care of myself and didn't need their help anymore, but my brother was different. He needed time to mature. The more I heard, the more I felt pushed aside, like an outsider in my own family. One evening, I sat alone in my room, reflecting on everything. The years I spent struggling, sacrificing so much to become independent, seemed meaningless to them. Meanwhile, my brother continued to live under their protection, never having to worry about the future. Everything I had built myself, but now they were handing everything over to him because he couldn't manage on his own. At that moment, I didn't just feel anger. I felt deep disappointment. I had given my all, but I received treatment I never expected from my own family. It was like a painful shock to me, and I couldn't understand how they could do this. It wasn't just about the inheritance. It was about the unfairness in how they treated their two children, who had loved and cared for them all these years. Everything started to get tense when I decided to express my feelings to my parents. One evening, after they informed me about the will, I couldn't sit still any longer. I looked at them, feeling as though I was facing a cold truth that I couldn't accept. "I don't need your money," I said, my voice barely hiding my frustration, "but the way you treat me compared to him is unbearable." My parents were silent for a moment, then my mother spoke in a tired voice. "You need to understand that your brother isn't like you. He can't take care of himself like you've done, and we need to ensure he has a stable future." That sentence made me lose control. I had worked so hard, overcome countless difficulties, and now I was hearing this, as if all my efforts meant nothing. What about me? Don't I need stability too, or do you think I've had enough? I couldn't keep my composure anymore. I've been independent since I was 17, working hard, studying, and now I have my own house, my own career. And him? He doesn't have to do anything, just living under your protection. My father looked at me, his gaze weary as if he had grown tired of these conversations. "You have everything and we know you'll be fine, but your brother can't be like that." His voice was hoarse, full of the exhaustion of a man who had long been dealing with a child who could never be satisfied. I couldn't understand. How could someone treat us like this based solely on feelings? When I told them I would not be their medical power of attorney and would no longer be involved with the will, my parents were deeply disappointed. My mother, in a moment of weakness, looked at me with sad eyes. "You have it all, but we don't have much time left. Think about your brother, about family." I couldn't take it anymore. I wasn't an unfeeling child, but the overwhelming sense of injustice made it impossible to stand by them any longer. "You can give him everything. I don't care anymore," I said, then turned and walked away. It felt like a heavy blow to my soul. All the years of struggle seemed meaningless to them. Later, my brother called me. His voice was gentle, as if he was trying to calm things down. "I'm sorry. Don't be mad at me," he said. "It's not my fault." I laughed bitterly. "You didn't do anything wrong. You're not the one I'm mad at, but they are the ones who've disappointed me." My voice trailed off, not because I was weak, but because I had no more words to say. After the tense conversation with my parents, I couldn't shake the feeling of being stuck. The family dynamic seemed to be slowly falling apart, and I knew I could never go back to how things were. Even though I decided to cut ties with them, I couldn't escape the mixed emotions inside me. I wasn't angry with my brother, but I felt an overwhelming sense of disappointment with my parents' decision. They had made me feel like an outsider in my own family. My mother called me one morning, her voice filled with worry. "Can you take me to the doctor? I can't drive anymore." I was silent for a moment before replying, "Ask your favorite child or call an Uber." My cold response caught her off guard. I couldn't take it anymore. My parents had disappointed me too much, and I couldn't continue pretending like nothing had happened. From that moment on, the atmosphere at home grew even heavier. My brother, always protected, couldn't understand the tension between me and our parents. He called me, trying to smooth things over. "Don't be mad at me. I didn't want this," he said. I didn't want to hurt him, but I couldn't suppress the pain and disappointment in my heart. "You're not the one I'm mad at. You didn't do anything wrong," I replied, trying to hold back my emotions. "But the way our parents treat us, especially you, I can't stand it anymore." I tried to explain it to him, but it seemed like he couldn't understand the pain I was going through. He just saw our parents helping him as something normal, while I had to struggle every day to gain independence. I couldn't say anything more, because I knew that no matter what I said, nothing would change. My relationship with my parents had already broken too much, and now all that was left between us was coldness and distance. I knew I could never go back to how things were. The decision to not help my mother, to no longer participate in family matters, was a difficult choice, but I couldn't keep being the shadow of a daughter who always tried to please everyone. This relationship, for me, had gone too far and couldn't be mended. As painful as it was, I understood that sometimes in order to protect myself, I had to let go.